After 20 years on the force, they've seen the worst. They've been a part of the worst. They know the worst part of humanity. They've seen the worst that men and women can do to each other. That takes pieces out of you, and it takes a very special person to bring you back to life, and that's the dynamic between her character and mine.
From the scene he was talking about at the beginning of this season, tell me about it.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's to be able to, as an actor, to be able to play that in one season is really sort of a gift, and I definitely feel that way. For me, working on 24 was a little bit different than working on any other series. I mean, I definitely feel like I brought my theater experience to this show. I mean, even the scenes are different. You know, they don't, a lot of other scenes in other shows sort of end and they conclude, and that's what they want in each scene. Whereas with 24, it's sort of always, each scene is, you're left kind of in question. And I think that that's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, I would think that would be one of the best things about it, is that you're not wrapping up everything into nice little bows at the end. Because the character goes on, no, we don't know what's going to happen to you and Michelle in the end.
But all our training as actors is about committing and committing to whatever
you have
the
on
scene or is responsible. Right. And so in the making of 24, you've had to take all of that away and commit to very little to give yourself room to move. And I know it sounds really slight, but for an actor it's huge. And you know, as an actor, you're not told to be vague. And yet there are areas where we certainly have to be very vague to allow ourselves to move in one direction or another at any given moment. That's been an incredible exercise.
Yeah.
And trust, too. I mean, you know, I think that was, there was something between, at least from my part, between Kiefer and I to sort of walk on the set and embody this person and just sort of, you know, as an actor, you want to be able to sort of just jump off the cliff and go. And that's terrifying. But I think the return is greater. And for me, there was just something about walking into this cast and crew.
Well, we had to kiss our first day. We never met.
Yeah, but you remember you came on my show and talked about how the great enjoyment out of working with you.
I walked up to Kim and I said, "Hi, my name's Kiefer. I'm really sorry, but I'm going to kiss you in about 3 minutes, and I want you to know I'm really nervous."
And I think that's, yeah.
Thank God. And we kind of went from there.
It just kind of, I don't know, it sealed something that we were sort of in this together, and it enabled, for me at least, it enabled me to sort of go to places that I maybe normally, you know, wouldn't as an actor because of my trust with
all
him.
the best directors I've ever talked to about acting say that what they hope they can do is somehow give an actor confidence enough to take chances. That if that's what they can give them, then they have done whatever is necessary to do after the wisdom of casting.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I think on this show, it's not just, you know, John Cassara is our main director and directs about half the episodes. He absolutely does that. And not only does he do it, but so do all the writers and producers. They place so much trust in our hands as far as where to take scenes, and you know, and it gives you this feeling of true collaboration, which is the other thing that I think a great director does, is really makes you feel like you're collaborating. And that feeling is better than anything. You know, when you feel like you're in it as a team,
around.
Right. Faith is contagious.
And they really do that. Yeah.
Tell me what you do. I mean, you're now on set, on this set, where Michelle is as your character, Tony. I mean, are you doing things in terms of the way you look and that have to do with not spoken words, but just a connection? The reason I ask this is that there was a guy sitting on the plane behind me, loved the show, and he said, I said, what's going to happen to each of the characters? And he said, well, I'm sure Michelle and Tony are going to get back together. And I said, why? And he said, well, they're doing those longing looks.
Well, you know, the looks on 24 are interesting because, you know, they started...
created by the director.
Well, no, they started very early, in the pilot episode, actually. I remember Stephen Hopkins, who directed the pilot episode, you know, he had these long lenses zooming in on you, and so you knew that a camera was going to pick up anything. Sometimes he'd be using 3 at a time. You knew the camera would pick up anything you did, so that you could throw off a look to sort of throw it into the mix. And if the editors want to use it and the producers want to use it to sort of screw with an audience, they had it. And you could do it. And
so that's more appealing as an actor.
Well, I love it. I mean, that's part of the thing. That's one of the things I've loved about the show is sort of like keeping people guessing as to whether my character was good or bad. And I think to this day, still people come up to me and say, you know, I still think you're bad. I still think you're going to go bad. And that to me is a great. I love that because you know. So I mean, those looks are. There's a lot of stuff in those looks, but it's sort of quintessential 24. Those kind of. You know,
I think it's interesting also because you get sort of the interior monologue. You get what the dialogue is, but it's not necessarily what's going on inside of you. And I think that as an audience member, is really extraordinary because you're hearing what they're saying, but then you may get that look from across the room, or the camera and will zoom in and get what you're thinking. And that, I think, is you're getting sort of a mix of everything. So it's really...
Let me just come back to Marwan, Arnold, your character. Can you allow him any humanity?
Actually, we shot, I think it was the 3rd episode, I had a wife and a kid. We shot a scene with, where they gave me a wife and a child, where I went to go say goodbye to them. And we shot the scene, and it was very moving and very touching, but it might have been too moving and touching, I'm not sure. But it ended up on the floor. They decided to lose it. And I'm not sure if you were privy to that, but yeah,
well, I was to the scene, and it was incredibly special. But I'll tell you one thing, though, that is interesting, and I think between our characters is a respect, and that respect comes kind of very late in the season, in the last, well, and it culminates in the last 2 episodes.
Last look.
But there is a respect. I'm not denying that you believe in what you're doing. I'm not denying that you have a point of view that you believe is worth dying for and taking a lot of people with you. I'm not denying any of these things, and I would love to be able to sit down and have this conversation with you and try and figure out if there was another way. But at this exact moment, there isn't. And so it's going to be you and I against each other.
Yeah. The only option is me or you.
Yeah, but there is a very subtle underlying respect of, my God, what happened to this person to get them to a place to make them feel this was their only alternative? And it is something that certainly are feelings that are shared within the intelligence community around this world that are dealing with terrorism as a whole. That terrorism is a symptom of a much greater problem. And there was this understanding, and as I would expect there would be, between men who have been dealing with this for 20 years on both sides of that fence. And there was a hint of that.
What do you learn from feedback from the internet, from all these chat groups that are obsessed by 24, if anything?
Can't please all of the people all of the time.
Throw a beer.
Yeah, that's exactly what you learn.
I learned not to.
And they will say, they look at the world through the prism of their own prejudice and their own enjoyments.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Some of them, I must say, though, we had a thing called, I don't even remember what we called it. It was a phone. There was one of the prop phones that we used on the show. They couldn't find the right one, so one of the crew members gave his own phone. And the number came up on the dial. And it made it in the show.
For a split second. I mean,
Yeah, split second.
Split second. It was the prop cell phone, actually.
And they froze it. Someone froze it and started dialing that number. And then it got out on the internet that this was a person on the crew of 24, and you could phone this number and talk to the people who were making the show.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Nextel had to buy the phone for us, and within a week, 10,000 people were calling a week. And
There was like 600,000 hits.
we had guys on our show who had never, we had guys on our crew who had never ever been able to get a sense of